Are you mad? Why did you kiss me in front of her? What if she saw us? I said, afraid and angry. Because I wanted to. She's my friend. I'll make sure she doesn't say anything. I promise she wouldn't say anything, replied my then girlfriend. This was a conversation that took place in 2010 in my university room in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Our relationship was a guarded secret. We could only express ourselves behind closed doors, largely due to the anti-LGBT laws and violence against members of the LGBT plus community. She wasn't my first girlfriend, but she was the first that was so bold and so open. Actually, I recall ending the relationship on the grounds of not wanting anybody to find out. Out of sheer desperation to be normal, I convinced myself that I was only a lesbian because I'd never been with guys. With that thought, I welcomed male attention and ended up in a relationship with a very nice guy with whom I was emotionally disconnected from. However, it wasn't long until the guy noticed there was something off about me and sat me down for an honest conversation. He wanted to know why I'd never been sexual with him. My reply was, I'm a virgin. Massa, even virgin the fear kiss. Don't tell me say you don't love me, he said in a rather sad tone. I felt terrible, and without thinking, I told him I'm a lesbian. In truth, things didn't change for the better for us. My confession left him distant and confused. After a while, I went back to the girl I'd ended things with. And not long after, I moved to the UK for studies. When I arrived in the UK, I found out that homosexuality wasn't a crime after all. However, it didn't take long for me to find myself in spaces that embrace one facet of me but deny the other. I can be a woman as long as I am not black. I can be black as long as I am not a lesbian. I can be a lesbian as long as I'm not African. But I cannot. You can say that being African has always come naturally to me. I've always been African. Cameroonian to be more specific. It's relatively easy to trace my ancestry where I come from. Were we sitting in an auditorium in Cameroon or in a hall in Cameroon, I would most likely tell my audience that I'm from a tribe called So, born in Jackery to be exact. On the other hand, 10 years ago, I would most certainly never have identified as black. Just like Chimamanda speaking of being black in the US, I wasn't black until I moved to the UK. I became black in the UK. Growing up in Cameroon, I didn't think about race because I didn't need to think about race. Those were the good old days. I must say that it didn't take long for blackness to find me as soon as I arrived here. There were voices loud and clear, telling me who I am, reminding me of the skin I dared walk in. One of my very first memories of being black in the UK was on this day. I was in the first bus, at least that's what they used to call it back then. I hadn't been in the country for up to 6 months. I came to study a degree in microbiology, by the way. So back to the bus. There was a group of teenage white girls sitting on the row behind me. I didn't pay them any attention until I became the focus of their senseless behavior. For some reason, they decided to start taunting me. In addition to calling me racial slurs, which I won't repeat in polite company, one of them pulled my wig off and they all started giggling. Obviously, the incident left me pretty shaken up, but what shocked me was the inaction of other passengers on the bus. I am certain that 3 or 4 people saw what was happening on that bus, but I couldn't comprehend why they would watch me go through such racist treatment without intervening. This experience was a learning curve for me because I had a communal upbringing, which is very much different from the individualistic society that I now live in. But most especially, this incident and many more I've had over the years of living in the UK taught me that blackness can be a collective identity and at the same time an alienating experience in a society like ours. In October 2017, I came out as a lesbian to my family and on all my social media platforms. As expected, it was a mixed bag of reactions from family and close friends. While some of them are still very adamant against who I am, some of them avoid discussing my condition altogether. But the public has had a lot to say. A movie producer promised to rape the spirit of lesbianism out of me if I ever step foot in Cameroon. Corrective rape is experienced by a lot of lesbians in Cameroon and across Africa. I still get a lot of death threats online and a lot of religious bigots have promised me a place in hell. It is one thing to experience this online. You can turn off your computer, report these comments, or block these people. However, I wasn't prepared for navigating these minefields in my real-life relationships. Since my coming out, it has been hard finding my place in the once welcoming African community here in the UK. You see, by design, most Africans believe that homosexuality is un-African. They think queerness is Western imported. This thought process is fed and fought by political and religious leaders who use their pulpit to spread violence against LGBT people across Africa. After failing to connect with my once loving African community here in the UK, I turned to the LGBT plus community for love, support, and protection. However, it wasn't long until I experienced racism in a community that was meant to support me. How can people who know what it feels like to be marginalize me? I was shocked with this experience. Among the Black community, I was made to feel like I'm too much of a lesbian to be Black. And among the LGBT plus community, I was made to feel like I'm too Black to be a lesbian. So what am I? Do I have conflicting identities? It was around this time of questioning that a friend introduced me to queer African history. It was also around that time that I realized that I was a natural continuation of my ancestors and that homosexuality is not un-African. Both erotic and non-erotic same-sex relationships were registered across different ethnic groups in Africa before colonization. The Western concept of femininity and masculinity promoted an anatomical binary, erasing non-conforming Africans who didn't fit into these rigid Western gender structures. For example, during the pre-colonial era, feminine men of the Langi tribe, which is partly present-day Uganda, were socially treated as women and could marry men. However, Britain came in through colonization and declared carnal knowledge a crime against the order of nature, introducing anti-sodomy laws. Today, homosexuality is punishable by life imprisonment in Uganda. In the Dagaba tribe of Ghana, gender was based on energy rather than sexual anatomy. It is safe to say that homosexuality is interwoven in Africa's fabric.